Dear friends, please support my channel Pure Stories and subscribe to my channel.
Madison balanced 3 plates of smoked salmon on her left arm when she saw the disaster in slow motion. Someone had left a puddle of champagne right in front of the main table at Manhattan's most exclusive charity gala. Her borrowed heels, 2 sizes too big, slipped like ice skates on marble. Time seemed to freeze. The plates flew in a perfect arc. The salmon drew an artistic trajectory through the air, and Madison fell backward, straight into the lap of the most impeccably dressed man in the entire ballroom. "Gosh darn it. I'm so sorry," she gasped, trying to scramble up, but her broken heel made her stumble again, this time with her palms planted firmly against his chest. "I swear this wasn't intentional." Harrison Knight looked down at the clumsy waitress now tangled in his lap, then at the salmon remains decorating his $50,000 Armani tuxedo, then at the 15 Japanese investors observing the scene in stone-cold silence. Mr. Yamamoto, the group's leader, bowed respectfully. "Knight-san, your wife is quite spirited." Madison's mouth fell open to correct him, but Harry silenced her with a look that could have melted steel. In flawless Japanese, he responded with something that made her eyes grow wide as dinner plates. The Japanese investors smiled with obvious approval. "Darling," Harry said in English with a smile so forced it looked physically painful, "perhaps we should go freshen up." "But I'm not your wife." "Darling," he repeated, gently but firmly gripping her elbow. "Let's go freshen up, right now." Madison glanced around frantically. 15 men in suits that probably cost more than her annual rent were watching expectantly. Harry looked about 2 heartbeats away from a complete nervous breakdown. And she desperately needed this paycheck to cover Dad's heart medication. "Of course, sweetheart," she managed, nearly choking on the endearment. 5 minutes later, in the opulent marble ladies' lounge, Madison confronted Harry through the ornate mirror. "What on earth did you tell them?" "That you're my reserved wife who gets anxious at social gatherings." He ran his fingers through his perfectly styled dark hair. "And that's why you sometimes work incognito as waitstaff to connect with everyday people." "You told them what?" "It worked perfectly. They found it endearing. Japanese culture deeply values humility and authenticity." Madison stared at him like he'd grown a second head. "And now what? Do I march back out there and announce, surprise, I'm just a broke waitress trying to pay bills?" Harry began pacing in tight circles within the confined space. "Absolutely not. They've already committed to the deal based on my stable family foundation. If they discover I fabricated this, I lose $2 billion. $2 billion? Dude, I don't even have 200 in my savings account." "Precisely, which is why you will continue playing my wife. Just for tonight. A few hours at most. What could possibly go wrong?" Madison looked at him like he'd completely lost his marbles. "Literally everything could go catastrophically wrong. I don't even know which fork to use for salad, let alone how to act like some billionaire's spouse. It's straightforward. Simply to speak minimally, smile graciously. Allow me to handle all conversations." She crossed her arms defiantly. "And what exactly do I get out of this charade?" Harry retrieved his leather wallet and placed a sum in her palm that made her knees buckle slightly. "That's merely the down payment. Successfully complete tonight's performance, and there's significantly more." Madison stared at the cash. It represented more than 3 months of her current salary, enough to cover Dad's prescriptions with money left over for rent. "Fine, but if anyone asks me direct questions, I'm winging it completely." "Absolutely not!" he nearly shouted. "No improvisation whatsoever. Simply agree with everything I say, without exception." Madison extended her hand decisively. "Deal, husband dearest." When their palms met, neither anticipated the electric jolt that shot straight up both their arms. Harry released her hand first, clearing his throat awkwardly. "We should return. They're waiting." "Harry." "Yes?" "What's my married name supposed to be?" His expression transformed into pure, undiluted panic. "Madison Knight," he whispered urgently as they approached the ballroom entrance. "You've been Madison Knight for 3 years. We married in Napa Valley, Honeymoon in the Bahamas. Napa Valley. I've never even been to California. Wine country. Rolling vineyards, romantic sunsets, boutique wineries. Madison tried processing this information while surveying the ballroom filled with people who likely earned more in a week than she'd see in several years. "And how exactly did we meet?" she hissed under her breath. "You were," he paused, assessing her appearance, "an art student, aspiring painter. That explains your free-spirited nature." "Painter? I can barely manage decent stick figures." "Then avoid discussing art entirely. Simply mention you're exploring different creative mediums." Mr. Yamamoto approached carrying 2 crystal champagne flutes. "Night-san, would your wife care for refreshment?" Madison grasped the delicate glass with such enthusiasm she nearly shattered it. "Absolutely, I absolutely adore." She took a generous sip and her face contorted with obvious distaste. "Champagne." Harry winced internally. Clearly her first encounter with actual champagne. "Madison possesses quite sophisticated taste preferences," he recovered smoothly. "She favors younger vintages." "How fascinating," Yamamoto beamed. "My own wife prefers lighter sake varieties. You ladies share wonderful sensibilities." Madison nodded enthusiastically, causing champagne to slosh dangerously. "Exactly. We both appreciate youthful beverages." The awkward silence stretched endlessly. Harry coughed diplomatically. "She means recently bottled wines. Current harvest seasons." "Precisely. Seasons," Madison agreed cheerfully, completely clueless about wine terminology. For the next 2 grueling hours, every conversation became a potential disaster. Madison nearly mentioned her cramped studio apartment. Harry smoothly transformed it into our cozy weekend retreat upstate. She almost referenced her waitressing shifts, became "my wife enjoys understanding hospitality from every perspective," and she practically choked when someone inquired about children. "We're actively trying," Harry responded immediately, sliding his arm around her waist. The contact sent lightning through both their bodies. Madison felt her legs turn to jelly, and an unfamiliar warmth spread through her chest. Judging by Harry's startled expression, he experienced identical sensations. "How absolutely precious," gushed an investor's wife. "Your connection is so incredibly genuine." Madison and Harry locked eyes, suddenly aware of something crackling between them that definitely hadn't existed an hour ago. "Yes," Madison murmured breathlessly, unable to look away. "Very genuine." Their moment shattered when a fellow server, Madison's co-worker, hurried past. "Maddie, what are you doing mingling with the VIPs? Stephanie's been searching everywhere for—" "I've never seen this person before," Madison practically shrieked, bodily steering Harry toward the opposite corner. Too late. Mr. Yamamoto had distinctly heard Maddie and noticed the identical server uniforms. "Night-san," he said slowly, carefully. "Might I pose a delicate question?" Harry's palms began sweating profusely. "Certainly, Yamamoto-san. Does your wife currently work at this establishment?" The entire world stopped rotating. Madison felt reality crumbling beneath her feet. Harry's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. Then something completely unexpected occurred. Madison felt fierce, protective anger surge through her entire being. No way was she letting Harry crash and burn because of her clumsiness. "I do volunteer here," she declared boldly, lifting her chin with dignity. "Once monthly, I donate my time to charitable causes, completely pro bono, because I believe wealthy families should actively contribute to their communities." The fabrication flowed so naturally she nearly convinced herself. Harry stared at her with a mixture of terror and genuine admiration. "My wife possesses an extraordinarily generous spirit," he said, his voice unexpectedly husky. Yamamoto's face lit up with complete approval. How truly admirable. A family that practices authentic philanthropy. When the Japanese delegation moved aside for private discussion, Harry gripped Madison's arm. "Why did you cover for me like that?" "Wasn't about to let you face disaster alone," she shrugged casually. We're temporary partners in this insanity. Something deep in Harry's chest warmed in a way he'd never experienced. Nobody had ever protected him so instinctively. Madison, Harrison Knight. They spun around to witness a statuesque redhead woman storming across the marble floor in designer stilettos that could double as weapons. "Who is that?" Madison whispered frantically. Harry's complexion turned ashen. "My former fiancé." "You're what?" Scarlett Montgomery halted directly in front of them, green eyes blazing with fury. "So the rumors are actually true? You married some random waitress?" Madison glanced between Harry and Scarlett, then noticed the 15 Japanese investors obviously watching this drama unfold in real time. "Well, crud," she muttered under her breath. The perfect cliffhanger hook was served on a silver platter, with devastating consequences waiting in the wings. Scarlett Montgomery was the type of woman who entered rooms like she owned them. Flame-red hair in a perfect chignon, emerald cocktail dress that probably cost more than Madison's car, and at this moment, she was clearly ready for war. 3 months, Harrison, she said, completely ignoring Madison's existence. 3 months since you called off our engagement claiming you weren't ready for commitment. And now I discover you're married. Madison looked at Harry, who appeared to have swallowed a cactus whole. Scarlett, I can explain. Explain what? Her voice climbed an octave. That you left me at the altar for some. She eyed Madison from head to toe with obvious disdain. Server? Madison's blood boiled. One thing was pretending to be rich. Another was being humiliated by this walking fashion magazine. Excuse me, Princess, Madison stepped forward. But who exactly do you think you are talking to me like that? Harry tried to intervene. Madison, sweetheart, there's no need to... Actually, honey, she emphasized the word while still glaring at Scarlett. There absolutely is. Nobody disrespects me to my face. Scarlett laughed with pure venom. Your face? You shouldn't even be here. This event is for people with class. And what class is that? Madison crossed her arms. The kind that abandons men at altars and then makes public scenes? A collective "ooh" echoed through the ballroom. Several guests moved closer, phones discreetly recording. Harry panicked completely. The Japanese investors were watching every second of this confrontation. Ladies, please, let's maintain some dignity. Dignity, Scarlett shrieked. I'm going to sue both of you. Fraud marriage is illegal. The world stopped spinning. Madison felt the ground crumble again. But this time, Harry reacted first. Fraud? He forced a laugh. Scarlett, you're delusional. Madison has been my wife for 3 years. 3 years? Scarlett spat. Harrison, we were together for 3 years. Deadly silence. Madison looked at Harry with an expression that could have melted titanium. So, she said very slowly, when you were engaged to her, you were already married to me? Harry opened and closed his mouth repeatedly. The Japanese investors moved closer, clearly fascinated by this soap opera unfolding. The situation is complicated. Madison felt genuine fury building, not just because of the lie, but for being used in such a humiliating situation. You know what, dear, she said, removing the borrowed ring Harry had slipped on her finger. You can explain this complication to your Japanese friends yourself. I'm out. She tossed the ring at his chest and started to walk away, but Scarlett wasn't finished. Oh no, you're not getting away clean. I'm telling everyone you're both frauds. Madison stopped, turned slowly, and then did something that surprised everyone, including herself. She marched back, grabbed Harry by his silk tie, pulled him down, and kissed him. It wasn't a delicate peck. It was a movie-worthy kiss, the kind that stops time and makes the world disappear. A kiss that made it crystal clear to anyone watching that there was real fire between them. When she released him, Harry looked like he'd been struck by lightning. 3 years married, Madison announced loud enough for everyone to hear. And my husband still makes me feel like this. That's what true love looks like. The guests erupted in applause. Some even whistled appreciatively. The Japanese investors smiled with obvious approval. Scarlett's face turned the color of a ripe tomato. This This is ridiculous." "What's ridiculous?" said Mr. Yamamoto, approaching. "Is an ex-fiancé trying to sabotage a happy marriage. In Japan, this behavior would be considered very dishonorable." Scarlett looked around, realizing she'd lost her audience completely. With one final venomous glare, she clicked away on her stilettos. When the commotion died down and guests dispersed, Harry and Madison found themselves alone in a corner of the ballroom. "That kiss," he started. "Pure acting." She cut him off too quickly. "Right. Acting," he agreed, but his eyes said something entirely different. "So, you were engaged to Miss Drama Queen for 3 years?" Harry sighed deeply. "Arrangement between families. 2 wealthy dynasties. Convenient marriage. I ended it because I realized I felt absolutely nothing for her. And now, what happens when your Japanese friends discover we're complete frauds?" "They won't discover anything," he said with surprising determination, "because we're not frauds." "How are we not frauds? Harry, I literally met you 4 hours ago." He stepped closer, and Madison felt that electric shock again. "The paperwork might be fake, but this," he gestured between them, "isn't." Madison swallowed hard. There was something in the way he was looking at her. "Harry, I don't understand. Yamamoto invited us both to dinner tomorrow night as a couple. He wants to meet the extraordinary woman who captured the heart of Manhattan's most eligible bachelor." He said, "What?" "And there's more." Harry ran his hand through his hair. "My grandmother wants to meet you Sunday, family brunch." Madison felt her knees go weak. "Your grandmother?" "Harry, this is spinning completely out of control." "I know, but if we back out now, we lose everything. And it's not just the money." He paused, as if about to say something more, but held back. "It's not just the money, what?" He looked directly into her eyes. "It's not just the money I don't want to lose." The air between them became charged with electricity. Madison felt her heart racing. "Harry." "A contract," he said quickly. "Let's make a contract, 2 weeks. You stay as my wife for 2 weeks until I close the deal and calm my family down. I'll pay you enough so you never have to worry about money again. And after that? After that, amicable divorce. You go back to your life, I go back to mine." Madison studied his face. 2 weeks. Serious money. And this strange feeling in her chest that she couldn't identify. "Okay," she sighed. 2 weeks. They shook hands again. The same electric discharge. Neither mentioned that 2 weeks could be too much time, or not nearly enough. "But Harry," Madison said as they prepared to rejoin the party, "I have one condition." "What's that?" "Tomorrow night at dinner with your Japanese investors, you better teach me how to use chopsticks. Because if I embarrass us both trying to eat sushi with a fork, this whole charade is over." Harry looked at her determined expression, and for the first time that evening smiled genuinely. "Deal, Mrs. Knight." The way he said Mrs. Knight made something flutter in Madison's stomach that definitely shouldn't be fluttering. This was going to be the longest 2 weeks of both their lives. The next morning, Madison woke up in her tiny studio apartment staring at a pile of designer clothes that cost more than her rent for the entire year. Harry had sent over a few basic pieces for the Japanese dinner that looked like they belonged in a museum. Her phone buzzed. "Good morning, wife." "Too early for sarcasm, Harry." "No sarcasm. We have exactly 4 hours to transform you into a convincing knight. I'm coming up." "You're what?" Madison looked around at her apartment, which resembled a disaster zone. "You can't come up here. My place is..." Knock, knock, knock. Madison opened the door, still in pajamas, an oversized college t-shirt and flannel shorts, and found Harry immaculate in a navy suit that probably cost more than some people's cars. He glanced over her shoulder at the cramped studio, then at her pajama ensemble, then at the mug of instant coffee in her hands. "All right," he said simply. Change of plans. 2 hours later, Madison stood in Harry's penthouse apartment, which had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park, trying not to break anything that cost more than her life savings. First lesson, posture. Harry was taking notes on a tablet. You walk like you're late for 3 different appointments. Maybe I am, Madison muttered, nervously touching a crystal sculpture that looked priceless. Stop touching things and walk like this, he demonstrated, shoulders back, measured steps. Madison attempted to copy him and nearly tripped over the Persian rug. This is absurd. Who actually walks like that in real life? People who attended finishing schools. Try again. After 20 minutes of walking lessons, they moved to appropriate conversation. Never say awesome or cool, Harry read from his list. Say marvelous or delightful. Delightful? Who talks like that? You do, starting now, and absolutely no slang, zero, nada, nothing. Why are you speaking Spanish? That was Italian, see? This is exactly why we need practice. Madison flopped onto his leather couch, which was more comfortable than her entire bed. Harry, this is impossible. I'm going to mess up and ruin everything. He sat beside her, and Madison noticed again how incredible he smelled, like expensive cologne mixed with something uniquely him. You won't, he said, and there was something in his voice. You were amazing last night. You improvised better than most professional actors. That's because I was furious at Miss Drama Queen. Not just because of that. Harry turned to face her. You have something authentic. People believe you because you believe what you're saying when you say it. They sat looking at each other for a moment that stretched longer than it should have. Madison felt the air getting thick. Right, she jumped up quickly. Let's continue the training. The next 2 hours were a comedy of disasters. Madison spilled red wine on Harry's white shirt. It's supposed to look natural. Mixed up the salad fork with the dessert fork. They're practically identical. And called caviar those weird salty fish bubble things. But there was a moment. Harry was teaching her proper wine tasting technique when their hands touched on the crystal glass. Both froze, looked at each other. And for a second, Madison completely forgot this was all pretend. Madison, he whispered. Yeah? I think we should... Ring, ring, ring. Harry's phone interrupted. Reality check. Yamamoto-san, he answered, switching to business mode. Yes, we'll be there at 7 sharp. When he hung up, Madison was fidgeting with her hair nervously. So? He confirmed dinner, and... Harry winced. He's bringing 3 more investor families. It'll be a table for 16 people. 16 people? And he specifically requested that you share some of your artistic insights. Remember I mentioned you were a painter? Madison stared at him in horror. Harry, I can barely paint my fingernails without making a mess. We have 2 hours, he said, already grabbing his keys. Art gallery crash course, let's go. At the Metropolitan Museum, disaster struck immediately. Madison looked at a Jackson Pollock and announced loudly, "Looks like someone had a paint fight and lost." The silence in the gallery was deafening. Harry whispered, "That's worth $50 million. Yikes." But then something interesting happened. Madison stopped in front of a Norman Rockwell painting showing a working-class family at dinner, hands worn from honest work, faces full of love and determination. "This one," she said quietly, "is beautiful." Harry looked at the painting, then at Madison's face as she studied it. Something shifted in his chest. "Why do you like it?" "Because it's real," she said simply. "You can see their whole story. The dad's hands show he works hard for his family. The mom's smile says she's grateful for what they have, even if it's not much. The kids don't know they're supposed to want more than this moment." Harry stared at her. In all his years of attending gallery openings and art auctions, he'd never heard anyone describe a painting so truthfully. "Madison, what? That was perfect." "Say exactly that tonight. Really, really, just maybe don't lead with the paint fight comment." They spent another hour in the gallery with Madison making surprisingly insightful observations about several pieces, mixed with occasional disasters like asking if a Monet was supposed to be blurry or did someone need glasses. On the cab ride to the restaurant, Harry was coaching her on final details. "Remember, we met at a coffee shop near NYU. You were sketching, I was reviewing contracts." "Love at first sight." "Love at first sight?" Madison raised an eyebrow. It sells the story, and when they ask about our wedding, small ceremony in Napa Valley, just family, very intimate. You were too emotional to speak during your vows, Madison recited. Perfect. And if anyone asks about... The cab stopped in front of the most exclusive restaurant in Manhattan. Through the windows, Madison could see men in suits that cost more than most people's annual salaries. "Harry," she said, suddenly panicking, "what if I completely mess this up?" He took her hand and that electric shock hit them both again. "Then we mess it up together." Madison looked at their joined hands, then at his face. Something was definitely happening between them. Something that had nothing to do with their fake marriage. "Together," she agreed. As they walked toward the restaurant entrance, neither noticed Scarlett Montgomery sitting in a black sedan across the street, phone in hand, making a very interesting call. "Yes, I'm absolutely certain," she was saying. "Harrison Knight is committing fraud, and I have proof. Meet me tomorrow with a photographer. This story is going to destroy him." The biggest complication of their fake marriage was about to walk through the door wearing designer heels and a vindictive smile. The restaurant was the kind of place where reservations required a 3-month wait and a personal recommendation from someone who owned their own island. Crystal chandeliers cast elegant shadows over tables set with more silverware than Madison had in her entire apartment. She counted at least 6 different forks at each place setting and felt her confidence evaporating. "Breathe," Harry whispered as they approached their table. "Remember, you belong here." "No, I don't," Madison hissed back. "I belong at a diner with plastic menus and bottomless coffee. Tonight you're Madison Knight, accomplished artist and philanthropist. You've had dinner at the White House." "The White House?" "Figuratively speaking. Just follow my lead and..." "Knight-san." Mr. Yamamoto rose from the head of an enormous table, beaming with genuine warmth. "And the lovely Madison-san. We are so honored." Madison plastered on what she hoped was a sophisticated smile as Harry made introductions. 16 of the wealthiest, most powerful people in Manhattan stood to greet her, and every handshake felt like a test she was failing. "Mrs. Knight," said Patricia Rothschild, wife of investment banker extraordinaire. "Harrison tells us you're quite the accomplished painter. How fascinating. I dabble myself, though I'm afraid I lack any real talent." Madison's mouth went completely dry. "Well, painting is... it's very..." Madison is incredibly modest about her work. Harry jumped in smoothly. She believes art should speak for itself rather than being discussed endlessly. "How refreshingly humble," exclaimed another wife. "In today's world of self-promotion, such discretion is rare." Madison shot Harry a grateful look. One crisis averted. The first course arrived, something that looked like abstract art on a plate. Madison watched the others pick up their silverware and tried to copy them, accidentally grabbing the butter knife instead of the appropriate fork. "Interesting technique," murmured the man to her left, watching her struggle with the knife. "It's European style," Madison improvised desperately. Harry smoothly reached over and handed her the correct utensil. Madison spent a semester studying in Paris. She picked up some unconventional habits. "Paris!" Patricia clapped her hands together. "How wonderful! Which arrondissement?" Madison panicked. She didn't even know what an arrondissement was, let alone which ones existed in Paris. "The artistic one?" she ventured. "Ah, Montmartre." Patricia sighed dreamily. "The Sacré-Cœur, the little cafes, the street artists. How romantic." Madison nodded enthusiastically, having no idea what Patricia was talking about, but grateful for the lifeline. The conversation flowed through topics Madison knew nothing about. Yacht clubs, private jets, charity boards, summer houses in the Hamptons. She smiled, nodded, and tried to look interested while Harry steered conversations away from direct questions about her background. Then disaster struck. "Madison, dear," said Mrs. Pemberton, a woman whose jewelry probably cost more than most people's houses. "Harrison mentioned you volunteer monthly at charity events. How do you choose which causes to support?" This was dangerous territory. Madison's only experience with charity was being on the receiving end of it when her family couldn't afford Dad's medications. I believe in causes that help families facing medical crises, she said carefully, thinking of her father's heart condition. The table fell silent. Madison wondered if she'd said something wrong. How deeply personal, Mrs. Pemberton said softly. Did your family face such challenges? Madison felt all eyes on her. Harry's expression was tense, ready to intervene if needed. My father, Madison said quietly. Deciding honesty was her only option. Heart problems. The bills were overwhelming. I learned how quickly a family can go from stable to struggling when medical crisis hits. The silence stretched longer. Madison wondered if she'd just blown their entire charade. Then something unexpected happened. Mrs. Pemberton reached across the table and squeezed Madison's hand. My dear girl, she said with genuine emotion. My husband survived 3 heart attacks before his bypass surgery. I know exactly what you mean. It's why I chair the Cardiac Research Foundation. Suddenly, half the table was sharing similar stories. Children with cancer, parents with Alzheimer's, spouses with